You don't feel it at first. Regret doesn't arrive like a storm. It comes quietly. It sits beside you when you hit the snooze button. It whispers when you say, "I'll start tomorrow." It hides behind small excuses that feel harmless. One missed workout, one unfinished project, one ignored opportunity, and then another. Years pass. The world moves forward. And one day you wake up with a weight on your chest so heavy you can barely breathe. That weight is not failure. It is regret. The painful awareness that you could have done more, that you should have tried harder, that you knew better, but didn't act. Regret is heavier than hard work, heavier than discipline, heavier than sacrifice. Because discipline hurts now. Regret hurts forever. And the question is simple. Will you carry the pain of effort today or the pain of regret tomorrow? This is the story of a man who chose comfort over discipline, and how that choice almost destroyed him. John Matthews was not lazy. That is important to understand. He was intelligent, capable, full of potential. In school, teachers said he could do great things. Friends admired his ideas. He had dreams of starting his own business. He talked about writing a book. He imagined himself strong, confident, financially free. But John had one silent enemy. He waited for the perfect moment. He told himself he worked better under pressure. He believed motivation would come tomorrow. When the alarm rang at 5 a.m., he pressed snooze. When he planned to study, he checked his phone first. When he wanted to start his business, he said he needed more preparation. Days turned into months. Months turned into years. Nothing terrible happened. That was the problem. Life was comfortable. Comfortable enough to stay the same. Comfortable enough to avoid growth. At 25, John said he was still figuring things out. At 30, he said he was planning something big. At 35, he avoided mirrors. His friends were advancing in careers. Some had built companies. Others had mastered skills. They were not more talented than John, but they were more disciplined. And discipline compounds. Just like interest in a bank account. Small daily actions create massive long-term results. John knew this. He had read the books. He had watched the motivational videos. But knowledge without action is a dangerous illusion. It makes you feel productive without producing anything. One evening, John attended a school reunion. He almost didn't go, but something inside pushed him. He walked into the hall and saw people he once studied with. Mark, who struggled in math, now owned a successful construction company. Daniel, who was shy and quiet, had become a respected lawyer. Even Sarah, who used to doubt herself, was now running marathons and speaking confidently about her career. They were not superheroes. They were disciplined. They showed up daily, even when they didn't feel like it. John smiled and congratulated them. But inside, something broke. On the drive home, he gripped the steering wheel tightly. He whispered to himself, "What have I done with my time?" That night, John couldn't sleep. For the first time, he didn't blame circumstances. He didn't blame luck. He didn't blame lack of opportunity. He saw the truth clearly. Every missed alarm, every delayed project, every comfortable excuse. The weight of regret pressed hard on his chest. And here's the painful lesson. Regret is clarity that comes too late. But in that dark, silent room, John experienced something powerful. He realized he was not behind because he lacked talent. He was behind because he lacked discipline. Discipline is a choice, a daily choice. The next morning, the alarm rang at 5 a.m. His mind immediately said, "Sleep more." That voice was familiar. Comfortable. But another voice spoke softly, "If you don't change now, you will relive this pain again." John sat up. Not because he felt motivated. He didn't. He felt tired. But he understood something new. Discipline is not emotional. It is logical. It is acting according to your goals, not your feelings. That morning, he went for a short run. It was slow. It was uncomfortable. But it was different. For the first time in years, he did not negotiate with his excuses. John did not transform in one day. That is another illusion people believe. Change is boring at first. It is repetitive. Wake up early. Exercise. Work on your goal for one focused hour. Limit distractions. Read 10 pages. Prove one skill. Repeat. There were days he failed. Days he wanted to quit. But now he feared something more than discomfort. He feared regret. He had tasted it deeply. He never wanted to feel that helpless again. Months passed. Small improvements appeared. His body grew stronger. His confidence increased. He launched a simple version of his business idea instead of waiting for perfection. It was not impressive, but it was real. And real progress builds momentum. John finally understood a powerful truth. You do not need more motivation. You need fewer excuses. You do not need perfect timing. You need consistent action. Discipline is remembering what you want most when you are tempted by what you want now. But the real test of his transformation was still coming, because life always tests new habits. And John would soon face a moment that would either prove his change or pull him back into comfort. One rainy evening, John received a call that could have shattered everything. A long-term client of his fledgling business had backed out. Money he had counted on vanished overnight. The temptation to quit, to return to old habits of comfort and procrastination, surged like a storm. He sat on his couch, staring at the dark window, drenched in rain that mirrored his frustration. Old excuses whispered, "You tried. Maybe you're not cut out for this." But John remembered the weight of regret, the heaviness he had felt years ago at the reunion. That memory no longer allowed him to surrender. He breathed deeply and said, "I will act, not react." Discipline, he realized, is not a one-time decision. It is a series of choices, moment after moment, that shape your life. The next morning, John worked harder than ever. He called every potential client he had ignored before. He wrote emails he had postponed for months. He stayed past midnight, refining proposals, learning what he needed to improve. The work was uncomfortable. It was exhausting. But each task completed was a small victory, a tiny push against the invisible force of regret. Discipline is not glamorous. It is repetitive. It is often lonely. But it is the only thing that separates the life you dream of from the life you settle for. Weeks later, the results began to show. Some clients returned. Some new opportunities emerged. More importantly, John felt a transformation inside, a growing confidence and resilience he had never experienced before. He began to understand that life does not reward potential, it rewards action. Potential alone is useless. Only disciplined execution turns dreams into reality. This was the lesson he had avoided for decades. And now, living it every day, he understood its power. John also learned the importance of accountability. He joined a small group of like-minded individuals, people committed to growth and discipline. They met weekly to share progress, challenges, and failures. Initially, he felt exposed and awkward. But the group taught him a crucial truth. Your environment influences your habits. Surround yourself with excuses, and you will fail. Surround yourself with discipline, and you are lifted higher. The group did not allow him to hide behind comfort. They demanded effort, consistency, and honesty. John thrived in this space, realizing that even the strongest will falter without support. The months turned into a year. It was still modest, but it was growing steadily. It established new routines, early mornings, focused work blocks, exercise, reading, reflection. The transformation was visible to everyone, but more importantly, it was visible to him. He no longer carried the weight of regret in his chest. That heavy, crushing sensation had been replaced with pride in action, satisfaction in progress, and the calm confidence of discipline. John understood now that discipline was not about avoiding failure. It was about consistently showing up, even when you feared failure. One evening, John walked past a park where children played, watched them run, unburdened by hesitation, full of energy and potential. He smiled, remembering his younger self full of ideas, dreams, and excuses. The reflection was bitter, but it was also motivating. He realized that regret had been a gift in disguise. It was a signal, a warning, a teacher. Without it, he might never have chosen discipline. Without the pain of missed opportunities, he might have never acted. Life had a way of showing its lessons in discomfort, and John had finally learned to listen. John's story is a reminder that discipline is not instantaneous. It is forged in small daily decisions. It is tested by adversity, grows stronger through accountability, resilience, and consistent action. Every time you choose effort over comfort, you repay the debt of past mistakes. Every time you show up when you'd rather quit, you move closer to the life you want. And every time you embrace discipline, you take a step away from regret. The weight of regret is heavy, but the weight of daily discipline, though challenging, is empowering. But John did not stop there. He realized that true growth requires reflection and adaptation. He kept a journal, documenting daily habits, lessons learned, and progress made. He celebrated small wins and analyzed failures without self-blame. Reflection became a key part of his discipline. He learned to identify patterns, avoid repeating mistakes, and fine-tune his actions for better results. Discipline, he understood, is not rigid, it is intelligent. It is iterative. It is learning to act wisely, consistently, and with purpose. 1 year into this journey, John looked back at the man he had been. The man who hit snooze, waited for motivation, and hid behind comfort. Realized that most people live their lives with the same quiet regret he once felt, never realizing that their potential was wasted. Not because they lacked ability, but because they lacked discipline. The contrast was striking. Some of his old friends had settled for comfort. Some had given up entirely. Others had discovered discipline early and flourished. John finally understood that life is neutral. It does not punish or reward you based on intention. It rewards action. It punishes inaction. John's journey also taught him empathy. He became patient with others who struggled. He mentored young professionals, sharing his story not as a lecture, but as a lesson learned through pain. Discipline is not punishment. He would say it is freedom. It is the key to avoid the chains of regret. The more he helped others embrace this truth, the more his own transformation solidified. Teaching became a mirror, reflecting the depth of his own growth and the power of daily action. By the end of this chapter in his life, John had transformed entirely. The man who once feared regret had learned to respect discipline. The man who once waited for the perfect moment now created it. The man who once felt small and powerless now carried confidence, resilience, and a clear vision for the future. And every morning when the alarm rang at 5 a.m., he no longer fought against the discomfort. He embraced it, knowing that each choice to act was a shield against the weight of regret. Years later, John sat at his desk in a quiet office, watching the sunrise paint the sky with gold and pink. His business had grown steadily, his routines were unshakable, and his life carried a calm, steady rhythm that only discipline can create. But it wasn't just the success he cherished, it was the journey. The man he had once been, the one who hid behind excuses, who postponed every dream, who surrendered to comfort, was still alive in memory, but he carried him only as a warning. Regret, once crushing, had transformed into a teacher. Every decision, every small act of discipline, had built a life free from the chains of what if. John reflected on the pivotal moments that had shaped him. The reunion where he saw friends thriving while he stagnated. The sleepless night filled with clarity and fear. The morning when he chose action over sleep, doubt, and comfort. Those moments were small, almost invisible at the time, but each had compounded into a life-altering shift. He understood now that discipline was not about grand gestures. It was about showing up consistently. Day after day, even when motivation was absent and fear whispered to quit. Discipline is not heroic in the moment. It is heroic over a lifetime. One afternoon, John received a message from a former colleague he had lost touch with. The note read, "I see what you've built. You inspire me to start again." John smiled. That, he realized, was the true reward of discipline. It wasn't fame, money, or recognition. It was the ability to live fully, to inspire others by example, and to repay the debt of past inaction. The man who once carried regret had learned to create value, not just for himself, but for everyone around him. Every disciplined choice rippled outward, touching lives in ways he never imagined. Yet John's story was not without struggle. Life continued to test him. Projects failed, clients left, health challenges arose, but each test was no longer a source of despair. They were opportunities to apply the very principles that had saved him from regret. When failure struck, he did not panic. He assessed. He adjusted, acted again. That was the key lesson he carried. Discipline builds resilience. It creates a buffer against life's inevitable storms. It allows you to bend without breaking, to persist without surrender, and to move forward even when the path is unclear. John often thought of young people like his former self, brilliant, capable, full of potential, but waiting for the perfect moment that never comes. He knew that waiting is the enemy of growth. Every hour spent in hesitation compounds into years of lost opportunity. He remembered the heaviness in his chest from that first taste of regret and wanted no one else to carry it unnecessarily. So he shared his story not to boast, but to illuminate a path. The path was simple, yet profoundly challenging. Wake up, take action. Commit to small daily steps. Repeat relentlessly. Avoid comfort that seduces you into inaction. Respect the power of consistency. John also understood a deeper truth. Discipline is not punishment. Many fear it as a strict, joyless path. But in reality, discipline is freedom, the freedom to design your life, to escape the chains of regret, and to live intentionally. It's a discipline to wake early allows you to exercise. It's a discipline to work consistently allows you to create. It's a discipline to learn continuously allows you to grow. Without it, potential is wasted. With it, dreams become inevitable. He had learned that the hardest choices, the ones that required showing up when it hurt, when fear whispered, when comfort beckoned, were the choices that determined the quality of your life. And so, John's mornings remained sacred. The alarm at 5 a.m. was no longer a battle. It was a ritual. He exercised, wrote, planned, and acted. He faced challenges with courage because he had built a habit of action. He faced setbacks with patience because he had learned that success is iterative, not instantaneous. He faced life with confidence because he had experienced firsthand the power of choosing discipline over comfort, effort over procrastination, and action over regret. Finally, John understood that the weight of regret is universal. Everyone carries it in some form. The difference lies in how you respond. You can let it crush you, haunt you, and define your life, or you can use it as a catalyst to change, mere to reflect your own responsibility, a push to cultivate discipline. John chose the latter, and that choice reshaped his entire existence. What once would have been decades of wasted potential became a life rich with purpose, achievement, and fulfillment. As the sun rose fully, John looked out the window and whispered to himself, "I may have lost years, but I will never lose again." And with that, he stepped forward, not waiting for motivation, not waiting for the perfect moment, not fearing failure, but walking steadily, deliberately, consistently, toward a life he had once only imagined. The weight of regret was gone, replaced by the quiet, powerful strength of discipline.